Tonight, I got 3 stories that prove you should probably trust your gut feeling when something don't feel right. Because by the time you figure it out, you're already in it. Welcome to Fearaintfiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. I was taking my daughter back to school when this happened. She was 20 at the time, a junior, and she had spent most of that weekend at home complaining about how fast summer was ending, which was funny because for 2 weeks she'd been saying she couldn't wait to get back to campus. That was pretty much our relationship back then. She couldn't wait to leave home. Then she'd get in the car with me and talk for 3 straight hours. We were heading north through North Carolina on I-85. It was late enough that traffic had thinned out, but not so late that I was worried about the drive. I've always preferred driving at night anyway. Less traffic, less people cutting across 3 lanes because they almost missed their exit. My daughter had control of the music, which meant I was listening to a bunch of stuff I pretended not to hate. Around midnight, she said she had to use the bathroom. I told her we'd stop at the next decent place. A few exits passed. Nothing she liked. She didn't want a gas station. She wanted somewhere with an actual bathroom where she didn't have to buy anything. Eventually, we saw a sign for a rest area. I pulled in. There were maybe 6 or 7 vehicles in the lot, a couple of cars, a minivan, 2 tractor trailers parked farther away. The place was lit pretty well. Nothing about it bothered me. My daughter got out. I stayed in the car. She made it about halfway to the building before she stopped, turned around, and came right back. She opened the passenger door and leaned inside. "You coming?" I laughed. "For what?" She looked toward the building, then back at me. "I don't know. Just come." That got my attention. She wasn't scared exactly. She just looked uncomfortable. I asked her what was wrong. She said there was a man near the entrance who had been staring at her since we pulled in. I looked over there. There was a guy standing near one of the vending machines, maybe in his 40s, baseball cap, light-colored shirt. Nothing about him looked immediately dangerous. I told her I'd walk over with her. As soon as we got close, the man looked away. That actually made me feel better. I figured my daughter had probably caught him looking in our direction and assumed he was staring at her. I waited outside while she went into the restroom. The man bought something from the vending machine, a soda, I think. Then he walked past me. He nodded. I nodded back. That should have been it. My daughter came out and we went back to the car. I started the engine. She looked through the windshield and said, "That's him." The man was walking toward a dark-colored SUV parked about 3 spaces away from us. I said, "Okay." She shook her head. "No, Dad, he wasn't parked there." I looked at her. She told me that when she first got out, she'd seen him standing beside a completely different car closer to the building. I shrugged it off. People walk around rest areas. Maybe it wasn't his car. Maybe he was riding with somebody. There were plenty of explanations. I pulled out. About a minute later, the SUV pulled out too. My daughter noticed before I did. "He's behind us." I checked the mirror, same SUV. Again, that didn't necessarily mean anything. There was only one way out of the rest area. Everybody leaving had to go the same direction. We got back onto I-85. He got on behind us. My daughter got quiet. I told her to relax. For the next 10 minutes, that SUV stayed behind us. Not right on my bumper, maybe 5 or 6 car lengths back. If I changed lanes, eventually he changed lanes. If I slowed down, he slowed down. I still wasn't convinced. I've been driving too long to assume every car behind me is following me, so I decided to test it. I took an exit I didn't need. The SUV took it too. My daughter looked at me. This time I didn't tell her to relax. At the bottom of the ramp was a traffic light. I turned right. The SUV turned right. Okay, now I believed her. I told her to make sure the doors were locked, even though I knew they already were. There was a gas station ahead, bright lights, people outside, maybe 10 cars around the pumps. I pulled in. The SUV kept going. My daughter let out this long breath like she'd been holding it for the last 15 minutes. I told her we sit there for a while. We went inside, bought some drinks, walked around. I wasn't in any hurry anymore. By the time we came back outside, almost 20 minutes had passed. No SUV. I figured that was the end of it. We got back on the highway. Another 30 minutes went by. My daughter had started talking again. Music was playing. Everything was normal. Then she suddenly sat straight up. Dad. The way she said it, I already knew. I checked the mirror. Same SUV. It was behind us again. To this day, I don't know how. Maybe he pulled off somewhere ahead and waited. Maybe he'd gone around us while we were inside the gas station. Hell, maybe it wasn't even the same SUV. But my daughter was certain. Then it got closer, and I saw the driver. Same baseball cap. That was enough for me. I called 911. I gave the dispatcher our location and told her I believed a vehicle was following us. She told me not to stop. She said they'd try to get an officer toward us. That SUV stayed with us for another 8 or 9 miles. Then suddenly, it moved into the left lane. It started coming up beside us. I remember telling my daughter not to look over. Of course, she looked anyway. The SUV pulled even with us. The man wasn't looking at me. He was looking directly at my daughter, and he smiled. Not some huge crazy grin, just a regular smile. For some reason, that made it worse. I sped up. He stayed beside us for a few seconds. Then he dropped back. Maybe 5 minutes later, I saw headlights coming up fast behind us. Then the lights on top came on. State trooper. I have never been happier to see police lights in my life. As soon as they appeared, the SUV took the next exit. The trooper stayed with us for a while. We never saw that vehicle again. My daughter made it back to school safely. For years afterward, I told myself the guy was probably just some creep. Maybe he thought my daughter was alone. Maybe he was trying to scare us. Maybe there's an explanation for all of it. I don't know. But there's one part I left out. My daughter didn't tell me this until after we got to her dorm. Remember when she first walked toward the restroom by herself? The reason she turned around wasn't just because the man was staring at her. He'd spoken to her. She hadn't told me because she knew exactly what I would have done. He said, "Your dad doesn't have to come with you." When she told me that, I just sat there. Because that changed everything. That man hadn't noticed my daughter when she walked toward the restroom. He'd already been watching us. He knew I was her father. He knew I was sitting in the car. And for some reason, he wanted her to come inside without me. I still drive at night. I still use rest areas. I'm not going to pretend this completely changed my life. But it did change one thing. Whenever somebody riding with me says they need to stop, I don't care how bright the parking lot is. I don't care how many people are around. I get out too. This happened in Mississippi in the summer of 1998. And before anybody asks, no, I don't remember the exact road. I know where I was coming from. I know where I was going. And I remember enough landmarks that I could probably figure it out if I sat down with an old map. But it's been almost 30 years. I'm not going to make up details just to make the story sound better. My Aunt Denise had passed away that June. She was my mother's oldest sister. And when I say everybody knew Aunt Denise, I mean everybody. The funeral was packed. People were standing along the walls of the church. There were folks at the repast afterward that I hadn't seen since I was a little girl. By the time I finally left, it was getting late. My mother wanted me to stay with family and drive home the next morning. I wouldn't. I had 2 boys at home with my husband, and although they were perfectly fine without me, I wanted my own bed. Plus, I was 34 years old. I wasn't scared of driving at night. My mother told me I was stubborn. I told her I got it from her. That was the last conversation we had before I left. For the first hour or so, nothing happened. I had the radio on low. The air conditioner in that car barely worked, so every now and then I cracked the window. If you've ever been in Mississippi in June, you already know that didn't help much. It was still hot, even after dark. I remember stopping once for gas, not because I needed much. Back then, my husband had this thing about me letting the tank get below a quarter, so I put maybe $10 in, bought a Coke, called home from the payphone outside. My husband said the boys were asleep. I told him I'd probably be home sometime after midnight. Then I got back on the road. Sometime later, I passed this little gas station. It was closed. Not closed for the night. Closed, closed. The windows were dark. There was an old rectangular sign out front, and part of it was missing. I remember an ice machine sitting near the building. There was also a payphone out by the road. I noticed it because there weren't many businesses around. Maybe 15 or 20 minutes later, I passed another closed gas station. Except it wasn't another gas station. It was the same one, same sign, same ice machine, same payphone. Now, I know what you're thinking. I got turned around. That's what I thought too. But I hadn't turned anywhere. I had stayed on the same road. Still, I wasn't frightened. I figured maybe there were two stations owned by the same people. Same design, same signs. That wasn't impossible. So I kept driving. A song came on the radio that I liked. I remember this part because I turned it up. It was Lauryn Hill. And before somebody tries to correct me, I don't remember which song. I just remember Lauryn Hill. I drove through the whole song. Then commercials came on. Then another song started. And there was that gas station again. This time I slowed down. Same broken sign. Same ice machine. Same payphone. There was something else too. A white pickup truck was parked beside the building. I hadn't noticed it the first two times. There was somebody sitting inside. I couldn't see their face. Just the shape of somebody behind the wheel. I kept going. Now I was paying attention. No turns, no exits, nothing. I watched the road carefully. Trees on both sides, occasional house, mailbox, nothing unusual. I checked my rearview mirror several times. Nobody behind me. I don't know how long I drove. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Then I saw lights ahead. The gas station. Again. Except now the white pickup was parked closer to the road. I said out loud, "No." There wasn't anybody else in that car with me, but I said it anyway. No. I didn't slow down this time. As I passed the station, I looked toward the pickup. The driver's door was open. Nobody was inside. That scared me more than seeing somebody sitting there. I started driving faster. Not crazy, but faster. I remember gripping the steering wheel and telling myself I was tired. I'd been crying all day. I'd eaten too much food after the funeral. I was emotional. I was probably missing something obvious. That's what I kept telling myself. Then my radio started acting strange. The music faded. Static came through. I turned the knob. Nothing. Another station. Static. Another one. Same thing. Then underneath the static, I heard somebody talking. At first, I thought I'd caught a weak AM station. I couldn't understand the words. It sounded like a woman. I turned the volume up. The voice disappeared. Just static. I turned it back down. There it was again. I couldn't understand what she was saying. But the longer I listened, the more uncomfortable I got. Because something about the voice sounded familiar. I shut the radio off. I didn't need music anymore. I just wanted to get home. A few minutes later, I saw headlights behind me. They were far back at first. Then they started getting closer. I remember thinking, good, another person. That's how nervous I'd gotten. I actually felt better seeing another car, until it got close enough for me to see what it was. White pickup truck. I couldn't tell you the make, couldn't tell you the year, but it looked like the truck from the gas station. It stayed behind me. I sped up, it sped up, I slowed down, it slowed down. At this point, I was scared, and I was angry too. That's something people don't always mention about being scared. Sometimes fear makes you mad. I remember saying, whatever you're doing, I'm not stopping. I don't know who I thought I was talking to. The truck stayed behind me for several miles. Then we came around a curve. There was a church on the right side of the road, small church, white building, gravel parking lot, one light over the front door, and there were cars there, a lot of cars. At that hour, I didn't care why. I turned into the parking lot. The white truck kept going. I sat there with both hands on the steering wheel. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my neck. There were people inside the church. I could see them through the windows, so I got out. A man came outside and asked if I needed help. I told him I gotten turned around. I didn't tell him the whole story. It sounded ridiculous. I just gave him the town I was trying to reach. He looked confused. Then he told me I was going the right way. That confused me even more. I asked if there was an old gas station somewhere back down the road. He said there were several. I tried describing it. Broken sign, ice machine, payphone, white pickup. He didn't recognize it. Then this older woman came outside. She'd apparently heard us talking. I described the station again. She knew exactly which one I meant. She told me it had been closed for years. I said, "Okay, where is it?" She pointed back the way I'd come. I asked how far. She gave me an answer that made absolutely no sense. According to her, I should have passed it once. One time. There was no loop, no side road that would have brought me back around. Nothing. I didn't mention seeing it 3 more times. I thanked them. The man gave me directions. I waited at that church for maybe 20 minutes before leaving. The rest of the drive was completely normal. No truck, no static, no gas station. I got home a little after 1 in the morning. My husband was asleep on the couch. I woke him up and told him I'd had the strangest drive of my life. He listened to the whole thing. Then he asked me something. "Why didn't you call me?" I told him I didn't have a cell phone. He said, "I know. Why didn't you use the payphone?" I didn't understand what he meant. Then I remembered. Every time I passed that gas station, there was a payphone out by the road, and every single time, the phone was hanging off the hook. I hadn't thought anything about it while I was driving, but I could picture it perfectly. Receiver hanging down, cord stretched toward the ground. I didn't sleep much that night. Years later, after my mother died, my sisters and I were going through boxes of old family pictures. We found one of Aunt Denise standing beside a car when she was young, probably sometime in the 70s. There was a gas station behind her. Old sign, ice machine, payphone. I stared at that picture for a long time. My sister asked what was wrong with me. I told her about the drive. She laughed at first. Then she looked at the picture again. She said Aunt Denise used to work at a gas station when she was young. I asked if that was the one. She didn't know. Nobody I could ask remembered. So that's where this story ends. I can't tell you that I saw a ghost. I can't tell you that the voice on the radio was my aunt. And I definitely can't explain the white pickup truck. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe grief had me more shaken up than I realized. Maybe I passed several similar looking buildings and my memory combined them afterward. I'm willing to accept all of that. But I know one thing. I've driven through Mississippi plenty of times since then, and I've never seen that gas station again. I've been driving trucks for almost 11 years, and if there's one thing trucking has taught me, it's how to mind my business. I wasn't always good at that. This story is actually the reason I got better. This happened about 6 years ago. I was hauling a load through Georgia, heading south on I-75. I don't remember exactly what I had in the trailer. Probably something extremely important like paper towels or frozen chicken. People see an 18-wheeler and think we're hauling government secrets. Half the time it's toilet paper. Anyway, it was somewhere around 2 in the morning. I'd already been driving most of the night, and I was looking for somewhere to stop, not sleep. I still had time left on my clock. I just wanted coffee and something to eat, preferably something that hadn't been rotating underneath a heat lamp since the Obama administration. I saw a travel stop coming up and pulled off. It wasn't one of the huge ones. Decent-sized lot, fuel islands, convenience store, maybe 20 trucks parked for the night. Anybody who's driven a truck knows what those lots look like after midnight. Curtains closed, engines humming, reefers running. Somebody parked somewhere they're definitely not supposed to be parked. Normal stuff. I fueled up and went inside. Got coffee. Bought 2 hot dogs, even though every decision I'd made up to that point was telling me not to. When I came back outside, I noticed a car near the edge of the truck parking area. Little silver sedan, hood up. There was a woman standing beside it. She looked young, maybe mid-20s. She was waving at trucks as they passed. Nobody was stopping. Now here's where I made my first mistake. I felt bad. My mother raised me better than that. Unfortunately, she also raised me to have common sense. And that night, those two lessons were fighting each other. I walked over. I stayed a good distance away and asked if she needed help. She said her car wouldn't start. I asked if she called anybody. She said her phone was dead. I pointed toward the truck stop. There's a phone inside. She looked at the building, then back at me, and said she didn't want to leave her car. That was strange, but not strange enough yet. I asked if she wanted me to call somebody for her. She said yes. Then she gave me a number. I called it. No answer. Called again. Nothing. She thanked me anyway. I asked if she wanted me to find somebody inside who knew more about cars. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I drive trucks. That does not mean I can fix everything with an engine. I know drivers who can rebuild half a diesel on the side of the road. I'm not that brother. If a warning light comes on, I'm looking at it like we're both confused. She laughed. Everything seemed normal. Then she asked if I had jumper cables. I did. They were in one of my side compartments. I told her I'd grab them. As I walked back toward my truck, I noticed something. There was a man sitting in the passenger seat of her car. I stopped walking. I looked again. Definitely somebody in there. I went back toward the woman. I asked, "Who's that?" She looked at the car. Then she said, "My brother." Okay. I asked why her brother had been sitting in the car this whole time while she was outside trying to get help. She said he was sick. I said, sick how? She didn't answer that. Instead, she asked if I could just bring the cables. Now my common sense had finally clocked in for work. I told her I'd get somebody from inside. She didn't like that. Her whole attitude changed. Not dramatically. She didn't start yelling. She just got irritated. She said they had already asked people inside and nobody would help. I told her I'd ask again. Then the passenger door opened. Her sick brother got out. That man didn't look sick. He was probably 6'2", maybe 200 pounds. Hoodie, jeans, moving perfectly fine. He looked at me. I looked at him. Then he said, "You got the cables?" I said, "Man, you look healthy to me." He didn't laugh. I thought it was funny. Apparently, I was alone in that. I started walking backward toward my truck. The woman said, "Are you going to help us or not?" I told her I'd send somebody over. The man started walking toward me, not running, just walking. I stopped. He stopped. That's when I noticed movement behind the car. Another man stood up. He had been crouched behind the trunk. Now, I don't care how charitable you are. There is no legitimate roadside emergency that requires one grown man to hide behind a Nissan. That's when I knew this wasn't about a battery. I turned around and headed straight for my truck. I wasn't running yet. There's a reason for that. I didn't want them to know how scared I was. Also, I had 2 hot dogs and a coffee in my hands. Priorities. I made it maybe 20 feet before I heard footsteps moving faster behind me. Forget the hot dogs. I ran. Coffee went somewhere. 1 hot dog survived. I don't know how. I got to my truck, climbed in, locked the door, and started it. The first man reached my driver's side. He started beating on the door, not knocking, beating on it. I could hear the woman yelling something behind him. The other guy was coming around the front of my truck. I laid on the air horn. If you've never had an 18-wheeler air horn go off 10 feet from your face at 2 in the morning, it'll introduce you to Jesus. Lights started coming on all over that parking lot. Curtains opened. Another driver hit his horn, then another one. Suddenly, those 3 people didn't want attention anymore. The guy beside my door took off. The woman ran back toward the car. The other man disappeared between 2 parked trailers. I grabbed my phone and called the police. While I was talking to the dispatcher, the silver car started. Let me say that again. The car that supposedly wouldn't start, started immediately. No hesitation, no clicking, no jumper cables, nothing. That Nissan came back to life like Easter Sunday. The woman got behind the wheel. The first guy jumped into the passenger seat. I couldn't see where the second guy went. They drove toward the exit. Here's where things got worse. Another truck driver came over the radio. He asked if I was the driver who'd blown the horn. I said, yeah. He told me, don't get out of your truck. I said I wasn't planning on it. He said, "No, I'm serious. There's still somebody underneath your trailer." Every hair on my arm stood up. I checked my mirrors. Couldn't see anybody. The driver told me he had watched the second man run between the trucks when everybody started looking. Instead of leaving with the other two, he'd gone underneath my trailer. I asked where. He couldn't tell from his angle. Now I'm sitting there wondering what this man is doing underneath my equipment. And that's a bad feeling, because there are things underneath a trailer that somebody can mess with. Airlines, brakes, tires, and I'm definitely not moving a 70-foot combination vehicle when I know there's a human being somewhere underneath it. So I stayed put. Another driver got out with a flashlight but kept his distance. A couple more drivers were awake now. The police got there pretty quickly. They found the guy crouched near my trailer tandems. He came out when they ordered him to. I never learned exactly what the plan was. Police asked me questions. I gave them the number the woman had given me. As far as I know, it didn't lead anywhere useful. They searched the guy they caught. I won't exaggerate what they found because I honestly don't remember everything. I do remember he had multiple phones, and I remember one of the officers telling me I'd made the right decision getting back into my truck. That's all I needed to hear. I checked my equipment before I left, twice. Nothing had been damaged that I could find. By then, my coffee was gone. One hot dog was somewhere in the parking lot. And somehow, I still had the other one. I looked at it for a second. Then I ate it. You can judge me if you want. I'd been through enough. I didn't leave that truck stop until the sun was starting to come up. For a long time afterward, I wondered what would have happened if I'd opened that side compartment and turned my back to get those jumper cables. Maybe they just wanted money. Maybe they wanted whatever they thought was in my trailer. Maybe they wanted the truck. I don't know. And I don't really need to know. I still help people. I don't want this story to make it sound like I see somebody stranded and just drive past them laughing. But I'm smarter about it now. I'll call Highway Patrol. I'll call somebody inside. I'll get you some help. What I'm not doing is walking into a dark corner of a truck stop at 2 in the morning because somebody says their battery is dead. Especially if your sick brother suddenly makes a miraculous recovery. And if there's another grown man hiding behind your car, God bless all three of you. I'm going back to my truck. Thank you for watching the video. Get in those comments and tell me which story was your favorite. If you liked the video, give it a like, share, subscribe if you haven't, hype it. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Until the next time.